Namaste and good morning, everyone. Let's start our Tuesday class where we have started Uddhava Gita. So today is our second class on that. So let's do the prayers first. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parbrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Om Bhurbhava Swaha Tatsavitra Varenayam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Na प्रचोदयात् अस्तो मा सद्गम्य तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गम्य मृत्युर्मा अमृतं गम्य ओम सहना भवतु सहनो भुनक्तु सवीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ओम शांति शांति शांति. So you can open your books on page number 13. And we all have the same books. So as I was telling you last week, Uddhava Gita is a part of Bhagavad Puran. Just like Bhagavad Gita is part of Mahabharata. So Uddhava Gita is part of Bhagavad Puran. We went through the first 5 verses. So today the verse number 6. And we decided that we will not go word by word translation of the Sanskrit, but I will definitely recite since you have the books of each verse, and then read the translation, direct translation, and commentary and purport also. So that way we can see what these authors, what are they saying about this verse. We agree or may not agree with their commentary. So that's why very important to go through the verse also. Because verse is the one which is from that scripture. Verse is the one which is written by Rishi Vyasa. Commentary or the purport, this is these authors are doing. And I'll tell you today, some places I don't even agree with this commentary. But you don't have to agree with me. You can just draw your own conclusion. But commentary is always, sometimes it could be biased. Or sometimes they can be looking from a different angle. So that's why we'll just read that also and then discuss it. So let's start with verse number 6. Tvam tu sarvam paritajye sneham swajan bandhushu Mai aveshye mana samyak samudrig vichar swagama. Now, so this is Lord Krishna is talking to Uddhava. And who's Uddhava? Sure, he's his devotee, but before the devotee, he's his cousin also, his friend also. Uddhav's father and Lord Krishna's father, they were brothers. Okay, so in Hindi we say Chachera Bhai. Okay, so now you should completely give up all attachment to your friends and relatives and fix your mind on me. So he's telling his cousin this, his devotee this. Thus, being always conscious of me, you should observe all things with equal vision while wandering throughout the world. Because he is instructing, Lord Krishna is instructing Uddhava that you go to the Badrika ashram. Tell those rishis what I have taught you. And for me, the time has come to leave this earth. So let's see what this author is saying about it. Lord Krishna thought as follows. So these are Lord Krishna's thoughts according to this author, not according to the verse. While remaining on the earth, I satisfied the desires of all those who sincerely wanted to see me. I married many thousands of women headed by Rukmani, whom I had kidnapped, and I killed many demons in various places and by various contrivances. I attended the religious functions organized by my friends and relatives, so that I have performed many wonderful pastimes for the satisfaction of my devotees. And we read about that in Bhagavad Puran and other places also. How Lord Krishna lived on this earthly plane, doing all those leelas. I gave my personal association to all the great devotees in the lower planets just to please my mother Devaki. I returned her 6 dead sons who had been killed by Kansa. I went to Sutal and blessed my great devotee Bali Maharaj. To return the dead son of my spiritual master Sandeepani Muni, I personally went to Yamraj and thus gave him my audience. I even benedicted the residents of heaven with my personal association when I went there to take the Parijat flower for my wife Satyabhama. I traveled to Maha Vaikunt Lok to recover the dead children of a Brahman. In this way, all the devotees who sincerely desired to see me received the fulfillment of their desires. However, Nar Narayan Rishi and the great sages who reside with him at Badrika Ashram, although hoping to see me, never had their desire fulfilled. I have been on this earth for 125 years, and so the duration of my stay has reached its limit. Being busy with my pastimes, I had no time to see these great sages. And yet, Uddhav is almost as good as me. So he is thinking to himself, according to this author. He is a pure devotee who has been awarded my transcendental opulence. I therefore consider him to be the right person for me to send to Badrika Ashram. I shall impart transcendental knowledge to Uddhav so that anyone who receives it from him will become detached from material existence. He is the right person to impart this knowledge to the sages at Badrika Ashram. He can teach them the procedures for rendering devotional service unto me. Loving devotional service rendered to me is the most valuable treasure available in this world. By receiving this knowledge, the desires of Nar Narayan and the other great sages will be fulfilled. The great souls who have surrendered unto me are enriched with the transcendental knowledge and detachment from the material world. Sometimes, being fully engaged in my devotional service, they may seemingly forget me. But a pure devotee who possesses love for me will always be protected by his sincere devotion. Even if such a devotee unexpectedly meets with death while forgetting to keep his mind fixed upon me, his love for me is so strong that it will give him protection so that he will eventually attain my lotus feet, which are beyond the vision of materialistic persons. Uddhav is my pure devotee because he can never give up my association. Okay? So always remember, these are the thoughts of that author over here. Lord Krishna never said that if you forget me at the time of death, you will still come to me. No. In Bhagavad Gita, we did not read that at all. The pure devotee is who constantly remembers God. And at the time of the death, if we forget whatever we remember, that's where we are going. That's why I said some of these comments made in these commentaries, we got to think it through. Those are not the words of God. Okay, words of God we read in Bhagavad Gita. And words of God we'll read over here too. These verses where it says Shri Bhagavan Uvach, those are words of God, according to Rishi Vyas. While contemplating in this way, Shri Krishna inspired Shriman Uddhav to inquire about transcendental knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service to him. He said to Uddhava, you should give up affection for your relatives and friends in the Yadu dynasty. This affection of Uddhav rewards the members of the Yadu dynasty are of two types: bodily relationship with the Yadus, relationship in regard to Krishna. Among the two, Uddhav is advised to give up the former. the Lord will explain to Uddhava how to give up this attachment. As far as the latter relationship is concerned, Uddhava is incapable of giving it up. So that means relationship to Lord, even though the Lord Krishna was his cousin, but still he is looking at him as a God though. So that relationship, that attachment we should not let go. The worldly attachments. As far as the latter relationship is concerned, Uddhava is incapable of giving it up. This relationship is not condemned. Uddhava is certainly aware of Krishna's mentality. Let's read the purport also. The devotees of the Lord are equipoised because they see all material objects in relationship with Krishna. Those whose hearts are steady do not become entangled in material affection in the form of aversion to Krishna, and thus do not consider their non-devotee relatives as the object of their sense gratification. Since those persons who see everything in relation to Krishna wander about in this world while giving up the urges of the mind, speech, and body, they are fit to be called devotees of the Lord or Goswamis. The purport of the Brahma Bhav or Brahma Bhut, Prashant Atma verse of the Bhagavad Gita is the perfect example of seeing all objects with equal vision. Okay, these are the two terms we read in Bhagavad Gita also. Let's go back to the text. It says, now you should completely give up all attachment to your friends and relatives and fix your mind on me. Okay, me, that is God. Thus, being always conscious of me, you should observe all things with equal vision. See, this is what equal vision is, Brahma, Bhut, while wandering throughout the world. So this is what we need to do too. We got to do our duties, but keep our mind attached to God. This is what he's saying, not just to Uddhava, to us also. Then in verse 7, Lord Krishna is still speaking. Yad idam manasaha vachaha chakshuhu urbhyam shravan adibhi nashwaram grihimanam cha vidhi maya manomayama. My dear Uddhava, know for certain that this material world which you perceive through your mind, speech, eyes, and ears, and other senses is an illusory creation that one imagines to be real due to the influence of Maya. You should know that all of the objects of the material senses are temporary, nashwar. The question may be raised, what kind of equal vision should Uddhava have? In reply to this, Lord Krishna says, O Uddhava, this material world, which is the object of the senses, such as mind, speech, eyes, and ears, is temporary and perishable. Any information received from this material body, which consists of the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, okay, knowledge-acquiring senses, we are familiar with 5 of them. Okay, Gyan Indriya, it's called. Our eyes, ears, nose, touch, and the taste. The 5 working senses, those are called the Karmendriya, and the mind. So 10 plus 10 and 1. They are limited and destroyed by time because of its temporary nature. The spirit, soul, coming in contact with the material body, develops material designations and desires the insignificant enjoyment that is associated with this temporary material world. As a result of this misconception, he is bereft of the service of the Supreme Lord. So that means we just get entangled into the temporary world so much, we forget why we are here. We forget our real goal. So when we study scriptures like this, we just are reminded again and again what our ultimate goal is. So remember, these words are not spoken just to Uddhava, to us also. Verse number 8. Punsoho yuktasye nana artho brahmasa gun dosh bhak karam akaram vikaram eti gun dosh dhiyo bhida. That person whose mind is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. This is good, this is not good. Constantly, we just wrap our mind around the objects. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and the performance of forbidden activities. Over here, the karam, akaram, vikaram. Okay? So karam is our duties. Akaram in this sense is we don't do anything. This is not a akaram in the sense that we have become a nishkam karmi. Because sometimes akaram word is used for that also, that you are doing the action, but you are not the kartapan is not there, doership is not there. But over here, akaram means not even doing anything. And vikaram is doing the forbidden actions. Let's look at the commentary. An elaboration of the topics described in the previous verse is being given here. The living entities sometimes fall into the trap of duality. They think this is prescribed, therefore better. That is faulty, therefore inferior. This is the conception of ignorant people. For the fallen souls, what is superior and what is inferior? King Chitraketu has said that all objects in this material world are insignificant. Therefore, it is difficult to ascertain which one is a curse, which one is a favor, which one is heaven, which one is hell, which one is happiness, and which one is distress. The faults and qualities of objects are attributed to them by the Vedas when it says that prescriptions are qualities and prohibitions are false. This is a fact. The Vedas have described these subject matters for the benefit of the people who are in ignorance. Karam refers to those activities which are approved by the Vedas. That's why it's called Karma Kand also. Akaram means to not perform those activities, that I don't want to do those. Refraining from even your duties, that's a akaram. And vikaram refers to those activities which are prohibited by the Vedas. Those who find faults and qualities are certainly ignorant. Purport. Mental speculators distance themselves from the consideration of the absolute truth and engage in enjoying various sense objects, being bereft of the service of the non-dual substance, the son of the king of Vrajya. That is not the constitutional propensity of the spirit soul. That is the illusion of the unsuccessful yogis. Being controlled by the conception of faults and qualities, such people accept a few temporary activities as prescriptions and a few activities as prohibitions. In this way, they attribute superiority and inferiority to various objects. But if all objects are seen in relation to Krishna, such distinctions will not arise. In order to attain liberation from such conceptions that are based on finding faults and attributing qualities, the topic of Brahm Gayatri has been described. Spiritual knowledge means knowledge with practical application. If one does not know the mystery of this, then he is sure to fall into illusion. Thus, he attributes faults and qualities to different persons and addresses them as Satkarmi, Vikarmi, Kukarmi. Okay, so let's go back and see what does it really mean. Is this commentary right? Do we agree with it? That person whose mind is bewildered by illusion perceives many differences in value and meaning among material objects. Thus, one engages constantly on the platform of material good and evil and is bound by such conceptions. Absorbed in material duality, such a person contemplates the performance of compulsory duties, non-performance of such duties, and the performance of forbidden activities. Okay? Because we are in a karma yoni. So obviously we do think about it. What should we do? What we should not do? What is our duty? How to do the duties? So that's why even in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna said, understanding the karma is definitely very difficult. Gahan, he used the word. So this is what he's talking about over here. So let's look at what else he's telling Uddhava, because he's giving a little direction to Uddhava, because obviously our material mind thinks that we don't want to detach from this world. We don't want to detach from our relatives. Why the detachment? So that's why Lord Krishna is making a little, in Hindi we call it a bhumika for Uddhava, so that he can go on his path to do the real duty. So now let's look at verse number 9. Tasmat yukta indriye gramo, yukta chit idam jagat, atam nishaksva vitatamaha, atmanam mai adhishware. Therefore, you should control your mind. See, therefore means because of the previous verse, you should control your mind and senses and see this material world, which is full of happiness and distress, as situated within the self, and also see that this individual self is situated within me, the Supreme Personality of God. Okay, so everything else, there's a duality over here. Non-dual is the Atma and Paramatma, which is residing right inside us. Therefore, you should regulate your senses and understand that this material world, which is full of happiness and distress, is situated within the living entity as their object of enjoyment. You should also see this material world as well as the spirit soul as being under the full subordination of the super soul, which is one of my features. By executing devotional service, all of one's senses become properly engaged. Then only can one realize that Krishna is the controller of all and that he is situated within everybody as the super soul. At that time, all the senses become engaged in the service of the master of the senses and thus become free from material designations. Impersonalists try to seize all sense enjoyment, thinking that in the perfectional stage, the living entities become inert. However, such self-abnegation simply denies one the opportunity to realize the absolute truth with the transcendental senses. The fact is that the master of the senses, Krishna, who is the only proper object of all the senses, is realized by rendering devotional service with all the senses. Because the conditioned souls have rejected their constitutional position, and because they want to enjoy without God in this material world, which is created by the illusory energy of the Lord, they fall into bewilderment, thinking themselves as something other than eternal servants of the Supreme Lord, or as instruments of the Lord's service. That is why Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, instructed his pure devotee Uddhava, just as Prahlad instructed his father Hiranyakashipu. And we know about this story also from Bhagavad Puran, Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad. Attached householders who do not see how everything is related to Krishna are perpetually deceived so that they cannot see the Supreme Lord as He is, because they are driven by their uncontrolled senses. Lord Vishnu is the ultimate goal of all the senses. The conditioned soul's propensity to enjoy the material senses is nothing but the spirit of enjoyment that is averse to devotional service. So conditioned soul is what? The Jivatma. What we think we are, conditioned soul, not the pure soul. When Krishna, the son of the king of Vraj, who is one without a second, becomes the only object of all the senses, then the temporary propensity of the material senses is checked, and the spiritual propensity for serving the Supreme Lord with purified senses is awakened. Because there are no longer any material designations in that state of perfection, the distinction between the body and the self, between the form and the owner of the form, and between the qualities and the owner of qualities cannot be experienced. The Supreme Lord is the only object of worship for everyone. He is the object of service for everyone and the object of service of all the senses of everyone. The abomination in the form of unwanted conceptions that bring about inauspiciousness in the variegated activities of this material world cannot influence the servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vrajendra Nandan. On the spiritual platform, the consideration of Shuddha Dvaita, Dvaita Advaita, Vishisht Advaita, and Shuddha Advaita appear to be situated on the same platform so that Ekyan system is not obstructed. See, these are the different philosophies we talk about in the other classes also. There have been many philosophers, they came up and tried to explain what this is. So this is what those philosophies are. When the philosophy of Achintya Bhed Abhed is revealed, the spirit souls are not seen as distinct from the associates of the Lord who assist him in his pastimes. On that platform, the pure spirit soul thinks himself as a servant of Krishna and thus engages in his devotional service. Unless one sees all objects in relation to Krishna, there is bound to be inauspiciousness. That is why the devotees of the Lord consider uninterrupted service to Krishna as the constitutional and awakened propensity of the spirit soul. People who cannot realize the Supreme Lord, the enjoyer of transcendental pastimes, become separated from Lord Achyuta and thus become faithful to temporary and imaginary objects. This is due to not understanding the essential characteristics of the Supreme Lord. In order to open the eyes of such blind people, the Lord, as the Supreme Instructor, expressed his desire to guide Uddhava and other similar servants of Uddhava who have no interest in the Karmakand system of the Vedas by giving them invaluable instructions. So you remember Karmakand is the first part of the Vedas. After the Karmakand, it's the ritualistic portion. There should be more and more love for God. Then you see God everywhere, in everybody. And the whole life is just nothing but service to Lord. And that's what Uddhava was fit to do at this point. And that's why Lord Krishna is sending him to those rishis. Because as a Lord, he knows where are the devotees, which devotees are waiting to seek this kind of knowledge. Okay, so now verse number 10, and that's where we end today's class so that we have enough time to discuss it. Gyan Vigyan Sanyukt Atma Bhuta Shariri Nam Atma Anubhav Tushtatmaha Na Antrayer Vihanse. Being fully endowed with conclusive knowledge of the Vedas, And having realized the ultimate purpose of such knowledge and practice, you will be able to perceive the pure self and become self-satisfied. Atamtushta. In this way, you will become dear to all living beings, headed by the demigods, and you will never be obstructed by any impediment. Antarai. See, antarai word is impediments, any kind of a obstacle. And we learned the obstacles from Rishi Patanjali also in Yoga Sutras, what antarayas can come up. If one does not act with a mind fixed on Krishna, then the demigods will create obstacles. This is being explained here. The word Gyan means ascertaining the purport of the Vedas. The word Vigyan means to realize the purport. To realize. That's why even the sciences are called Vigyan. Because realization is there, but ultimately we got to realize the ultimate, not just only the Prakriti. One must possess both. You remember there is a chapter, Gyan Vigyan Yoga in Bhagavad Gita. So we need to have the knowledge of both. When one is self-realized, one automatically becomes satisfied. In that condition, one becomes the object of affection of those who have demigod bodies. Demigod means the devatas. Those are like a head of those elemental forces. This is confirmed in the Vedas, wherein it is stated, Aham ahesam sa bhavatite. So it's like a bhav iti. Such a soul is very joyful. Thereafter, the demigods no longer create any disturbances. Due to lack of knowledge regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vrajendra Nandan, who is one without a second, the impersonalists cannot understand that both the object of worship and the worshippers are situated in the eternal spiritual kingdom. But because the eternal devotees of Krishna, who accept the personal form of the Lord and who are expert in seeing spiritual variegatedness and blissful, due to realizing their service to Krishna, they become liberated from the conception of seeing the difference between the body and the owner of the body. In such a state, the insignificance of the four objectives of the life is exposed. Those who are devoid of love for Hari and who glorify the concept of impersonalism, which is snare of Hari's illusory energy, Maya, face an impediment in their path of self-realization. As a result, they bring about their own ruination, as did Kansa, Jarasandha, and so on. Theoretical knowledge can be purified when it is practically applied. Okay, we can stop it here and we'll just have some discussion on what we have really learned. What does it really mean to us? Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaye Purnam Eva Visheshyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you very much.